pjnet.tv. I'm Coach Prasick. Our bumper's running. We are streaming. We are recording, and we have waiting in our green room a first-time guest that you are going to want to hear from. So, let's do that. Let's count it down to Studio 9, starting now. Well, good evening. Welcome. This is pjnet.tv. I am so glad to be here. I wasn't actually here last night. We had a pre-recorded session, and I was not having fun. Okay. But thank goodness. But tonight is a brand new night. I'm a brand new man. I feel great, and I can't wait, and you can't either, for that matter. I can't wait to hear from our next guest, who is a first-time guest, all the way from the flyover country of Nebraska. And with us on the big screen, Kathy Geary Anderson. I guess the Geary is the thing authors do to put their name so it doesn't. Kathy Anderson is just too vague, too common. Did you Google your name? Did you Google your name to find out other Kathy Andersons?
Absolutely, yeah. And
anything
my agent
shocking?
also was saying you need to change it. So we did a lot of different things, but then we finally just said, there's no other Kathy Geary Anderson, so here we go.
Well, Michelle Medlock Adams did that, and it turns out that there apparently is a porn star named Michelle Adams. So she thought it would be a good idea to disambiguate herself. She's our guest coming up at the bottom of the hour. So, Kathy, you have had a robust life. If you stopped now, you've accomplished a lot of goals that people would have set for themselves. You've had a full-time career, right?
Well, I did have a career way back in a previous life, it feels like. But in my 20s, yes, I was a teacher, English high school teacher. And then I went into more things like ad writing and helping with a real estate company and advertising and newsletters and things like that. And then basically stayed home and raised a couple of kids. So.
A stay-at-home mom raising kids that used to be a school teacher before that. What an American dream. Okay.
There you go.
Not everybody gets to do that. I guess your husband was grateful, and it just doesn't happen much these days.
No, it is harder.
Yeah. So did you homeschool them, or did they go to regular school, blah, blah, blah?
I did not homeschool. We considered it at one time, but we have a really good school district near us, and we're able to have our kids to go to that. And we were very pleased with their education. So, so I did not homeschool.
So, how long have you been an empty nester?
I'm thinking, let me see, 2016, if we can do the math here.
I guess about 6 years.
Yep.
I can do that because I'm not on screen. I'm not,
There you go. Yeah. Well, I'm very strong in the English and language arts, and not so much in the math skills.
Yeah.
But.
So is that what prompted the writing? Is you've just empty nest, got time on your hands? For a lot of people, it was COVID, or was it something else?
Well, I would say the writing part of it, I started way back. Something I always wanted to do. And so when my daughter went to kindergarten, then I started taking classes in novel writing and going to conferences and just kind of learning the craft, and then just started writing books and ended up writing 3 of them. So it's really been a long process. It wasn't just something that came up at Empty Nest, but I was able to really, I would say, concentrate more on the actually getting published when my kids left the nest. So
I can only imagine, Kathy, that novel writers probably see stories everywhere in ordinary life. Is that, am I right?
That is true. Yeah. And I like history. I do historical writing, and so I can see a story. You go to an old house or something, and suddenly you've got a story brewing. Museums are great for that too. But yeah, it's something that there's always something that kind of sparks that. Oh, that would be interesting. I wonder what that was like, or how they lived, or what would that become.
So
So
what can you do that doesn't cause you to go into story writing, concocting, imagining mode? Is there any relaxation that you can do that you can disconnect?
Um, well, that's a good question. I like to read, but that kind of keeps you in the story mode, I guess. Um, we do have a lake cabin that we've been, like, we basically had a builder build us all the exterior and do all the plumbing and electrical, and then we decided to do all of the finish work. So my
Mm-hmm.
husband and I have been spending a lot of weekends. I knew nothing about construction. So thank goodness
Okay.
he knows a little bit more. But just adding tongue and groove to walls and trim and all the painting and flooring and just tile work. I've learned that. So there's been a lot of things to learn on that. So I guess that really kind of a
One
little bit takes you away.
one
But
too many episodes of one of those HGTV stories.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So so that's what you do to kind of disconnect and just have some time to yourself, you and your husband. So if later
Mhm.
on a book comes out and the setting is a log cabin, we will know that this was all nonsense that you shared
You
with
know how
us.
that happened, right?
So writing is, I think of it as sort of a solitary activity. How does that impact? Now you started writing after the children were gone, but
Right.
how does that impact a marriage? I mean, does it like, are you like me? You have to just go immerse yourself in a cave or somewhere, or how does it change the interaction of ordinary of day to day life with your family?
Well, I would say, the fact that my husband still works full time is helpful
Mm-hmm.
because I have my little, world while he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But there are times he comes home and asks me if I'm still in the 1900s because I'll be in kind of a zone. Um, so I would say right now it's all working fairly well because he has his day job and I have mine. Um, but he is within a few years of retirement, and I feel like things might change a little as we get closer to
Yeah,
that. But
we need to talk to him when that happens.
yeah, I
He,
think
he
so
he may need a
because it's gonna,
therapist at that point.
yeah, it'll be a transition.
He didn't sign up for this though, did he? I mean, you
No,
married a
probably
teacher,
not.
right?
Right, we were both teachers, so we've both gone our different routes. But yeah, we he was a teacher and a coach, and I was a teacher, and
Oh,
that's kind of what we thought we would be doing, and
what
we
did
didn't.
what did he coach?
Football.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll
He
have to
was a
have him
football
on.
coach.
I
Well, yeah.
gee, I respect him. So many people coach these other games that I call girls' games. Um,
Oh, okay.
but and
Like soccer or something? Or
well, right. I mean, any game that has men and women, is obviously not a violent sport, and any game that
oh, there
doesn't
you
have an
go.
ambulance standing by, staged up at the game,
Well,
it's
that's
clearly
true.
not violent enough for vicarious gladiatorial
There you go.
experiences, which well, good for him. Of course, it's
Yeah,
I've spent a few hot summers. Of course, football season up there may not be quite as hot as it is down here.
it wasn't, but he did coach in Texas. That's where we met.
Yeah.
And so, Texas
Why would
5A
you Why would
football.
you leave a great place like Texas to go to Nebraska?
Because that's where he's from. He wanted to go home.
Oh, then that's
And that's
sounds.
kind of where my family's from too, actually. I
I know.
mean, to be totally honest, my grandparents were from Nebraska, about 45 minutes from where he grew up. So My parents were missionaries, so we ended up in this very southern part of Texas, but we spent a lot of summers coming back to what we called the farm because it probably was the only one, I'm sure, in Nebraska, according to us. So we'd come
I
back
don't
and
think so. But anyway,
see it. I know.
yep. I've never been to your great state. I have flown over it, as have many.
Yes.
I've been to Oklahoma, if that counts. It's
Yeah.
not that different, is it?
No. Well, it's hotter in Oklahoma.
Really?
Maybe not as many corn and fields of corn and beans. I would say we're more like Iowa and Illinois than
Oh yeah.
Oklahoma.
Oh okay. Okay. Well, Kathy, I'm kind of dodging the question. I always get a little bit uncomfortable talking to fictional writers because I have this old fogey notion that if you're going to if you're inspired by God to write something, it would seem that God would have you write something other than fiction. Am I just an old fogey?
Well, I think that God and Jesus basically were storytellers. Um, if you listen to the Gospels, you're going to hear a lot of stories
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus told in order to get a point across. And I think we learn through story. So you can say it's fiction, but fiction is basically just telling a story. And I think each of my stories have kind of a deeper lesson or theme to them, um, of things that God has taught me through life. And so, even though
How
it's fiction,
how do
I
you
would
how do you
say
weave
it's
that
an easy
in?
way to learn.
How
What was that?
how do you weave in that God speak? One of the best answers I got to that is every story, fictional story, had a mentor. Well, the mentor was the God figure, sort of.
Mm.
So
Hmm.
how do you do it?
Well, you do have usually a wise voice, and it can be one character, it can be several characters, but you do have someone in the story that speaks truth usually.
Hmm.
Um, I think in my last one, it's probably two characters. One is Granny Baskin, which is an older lady that speaks truth to the heroine, and then there's a gentleman named Sykes who kind of talks to the hero in their struggles.
Hmm.
But I think you do put in those voices of truth, but and like I said, it can be more than one character, but there is somewhere in the story that you're going to have the truth come out.
Well,
In the
and
last story,
the
in the last story I've written, it's all about forgiveness, and so there's a lot of wrestling with that.
oh, okay, okay. That's a good biblical theme. I've had authors. I don't. I hate to use the word justify, but they fall back on this. Well, I'm a Christian fiction writer, so I write clean fiction. Well,
Hmm.
well, good, good. But that doesn't qualify it as Christian content. It's clean
Right.
content. How where's that line? Do you approach that line? I mean, come on, Kathy, to make a romance steamy, you gotta kind of go where maybe Christians might not go. How much pressure do you get to do that kind of thing?
um I don't. I kind of, obviously I don't go into detailed scenes or anything like you would say maybe a secular book on a romance would. But I don't think that falling in love or having feelings or even being attracted to someone is necessarily non-Christian. I think that's human, and God made love and marriage and all of that,
That's why
and
we're here. Yeah, that's
that's why we are here. And I don't think any of that is non-Christian. And I do. I mean, there are some authors that just want to write clean fiction, and that's fine. I would say mine have a little bit more of a Christian slant to it because there is usually a message, something that the characters are learning and grappling through. that has a Christian theme to it. And there are Bible verses that are discussed, or at least biblical themes that are discussed. So I would say that's what makes it a little bit more of a Christian tone to it.
Yeah. I have heard Christian authors testify that if you're going to be traditionally published, one of the things the publishers is going to do is they're going to scan it for keywords such as LGBTQ or inclusiveness, diversity, and all these social topics.
Right.
You don't have to contend with that, do you?
I don't. In some ways, I almost wish that I had someone that would maybe be able to pick some of that out, because sometimes you can say something that is maybe offensive and not even realize it. But yeah, mine is historical. And so you do kind of have a little bit more, how do you do viewpoints? So in my very first book, she was confronting a little bit of the Indian, on the Indian reservations where either the government or a church-based entity would come in and educate the Indian children in the white culture. And that can be a very, I guess, controversial in today's. It can be a controversial subject, and sometimes, you have to kind of bring out how I feel like, as a historical writer, you have to bring out what they would have maybe seen at the time.
Well, yeah, norms have changed, and for the good in many cases. But I just heard that Disney got rid of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah,
it's sad because those aren't endorsements or legitimations of norms in the past that have changed for the better in many cases.
Right.
But at the same time, how do you do a story set historically without entering into the cultural norms of that period of history? It's it's not trying to legitimate it. It's not trying to glorify it. It's just the way it was.
Right. And I think that today a lot of people just don't even they want to rewrite history, which I don't think you can rewrite history. History happened. I think you can learn from it.
But they're trying.
But I don't know that going back and rewriting the norms and values, that isn't really historical.
Yeah. How can you learn from it if you don't see it for what it was?
Right.
And there's much of our history that is glorious and grand, but there's some of our history that we wish things would have been. Well, we've made changes, and in many cases for the better. Okay.
Right. We made mistakes, and
Well, it was the norms of the time, and those norms have changed. And okay, well, we have 2 minutes. You have 3 books behind me. Give it your best shot in 2 minutes to cover this. Tell us about your 3 works that are illustrated or depicted behind me.
Well, they're called the Wind River Chronicles, which they are set in I can't even say it, the Wind River mountain range of Wyoming. And basically, it's right around the turn of the century, so it's not your typical Western type story, because it's a little bit later than that period of time. But the 3 of them basically came to be, the second book in that series, Songs in the Storm, is the story of my great-grandparents. He was a jeweler in New Jersey who was diagnosed with tuberculosis, which in that day and age is kind of like getting a diagnosis of cancer. It was, I think, the second leading killer of people at the time. And their main way of dealing with that was to send them out west. I think if you go into the history of Denver or Colorado Springs, you're going to find that those cities really grew up on basically the whole tuberculosis problem. There are tons and tons of people that came out for that, and sanatoriums that were in this area and all of that. So it was kind of fascinated me as a kid. And so I decided to kind of fictionalize it and write it into a story. And then the other two kind of came from that. They were pieces of their story that I took just kind of a kernel, 2 sentences of maybe truth, and turned them into a novel. So it was kind of fun to take those and kind of run with them, because could do a little bit more of the, I guess, creating part than with the book that followed more of my great grandparents' life. But all of them have a lot of what I would call fabrication. I made their story a lot more interesting maybe than it was when they came out. But anyway, those 3 stories, they're all set at about the same time, 1900 to 1903. And it just tells the story of 3 separate couples and different struggles that they went through.
So you've got 3 under your belt. You going to quit while you're ahead?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so either.
Continue.
Okay.
Got an idea of a spin-off sort of that will take one of the characters in the 3rd book to Denver, and gonna have some fun with that, I think.
Well, just keep going as God directs you. Well, Kathy, it's been a fun 22 minutes, but we are out of time. And by golly, when that next one comes out, I hope you'll tap us on the shoulder and tell us more about that or whatever else is going on in your life. But it has been a pleasant time just having you share with us, and we appreciate how you're using the gifts that God has given you, including that of being an empty nester, to make the best of it and to make a difference. KathyGearyAnderson.com is your website. And folks, if you want to connect with Kathy, go there and you can find out even more about her. But for now, we're going to have to go. We appreciate you sharing with us, Kathy. We've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. Kathy Geary Anderson here on pjnet.tv. Gosh, that went so fast. All right. Well, in just a few moments at the bottom of the hour, Michelle Medlock Adams is scheduled to appear. So I've got to get some things ready for her. And while I'm doing that, I always suggest that you use this time, redeem the time. Let's not just waste the time. Our producer Barbara is going to be playing some tunes in our pjnet.tv chat room for your enjoyment, for those of you there. While she's doing that, consider this, or these 2 questions. First, number 1. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? 2. How long ago was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.